And now we have more facts that are emerging in this entire Derek Chauvin trial in the first place, showing a very different picture of what's actually happening and what the mainstream media is reporting. So there's a few things that are going on that are very significant problems that are being ignored or misrepresented by the mainstream media. The first one is the actual cause of death. The second being whether Chauvin actually caused the death. And the third being whether the force used by Chauvin was unlawful. And for many other situations, it's also considering Chauvin's intent. What was the evidence behind all of these situations? Because that needs to be taken into consideration, obviously. So the people who only read the mainstream media coverage of the case are ignorant of all of these issues. They have no idea what's going on. Because many of them probably don't care, sure. But I think also many of them are just legitimately misinformed about what's going on. So there was this article from the Washington Post, and they put this up here saying, and the title of it is, quote, Chauvin's attorney argues Floyd saying, "I can't breathe" was a form of resisting arrest. Okay, except that entire title is completely false. So that's not what Chauvin's attorney said in the questioning of the MPD officer of the use of force trainer. So as the article in the text basically says, if you go down in the article further, it says that the context was testimony elicited that officers need to consider a person's other actions in judging whether a suspect saying "I can't breathe" is legitimate, and that if the suspect is otherwise actively resisting arrest. If they're doing that, and you can determine that they are not telling the truth, maybe based on other situations where they didn't tell the truth, like George Floyd talking about his mother, which had died, then the statement could be considered as not credible. So then Nelson asked, and Nelson is Chauvin's lawyer, asked the question, if somebody is saying "I can't breathe" and they're passing out and they're not resisting, that's one form of an analysis, right? Because the actions of the suspect are consistent with the verbal utterances he's making, right? He went on to say, other times, and in this particular case, when Mr. Floyd was initially saying that he couldn't breathe, he was actively resisting arrest initially when he was in the backseat of the vehicle, right? The admission by the MPD officer was significant in the defense, showing that the use of force was reasonable. But the Washington Post readers have no idea about any of that because they're not telling them about what's going on. Certainly not the majority who read only the headline and the opening paragraph. Once again, another tactic that the fake news likes to oftentimes do to mislead people because they know that most people just are scrolling through and don't actually go into the reading of the article as well. Because then they'll combat it, and if you call it out and you say, well, that's a fake news article, that's incorrect, that's misrepresenting the points and things that are going on, then Washington Post will respond and say, well, look, it's at the very bottom of the article. Surely that was what was intentional, right? But it's not. They're doing it on purpose, and they know that they're doing it on purpose. And that's just a small example, by the way, of how the media distorts the case of the trial and fits it into their narrative. The distorted narrative will lead to an even larger explosion in violence in the streets after the verdict, because of the fact that people will legitimately believe that this was the most clear-cut case on planet Earth. And it's not. It just isn't. Anyone telling you that this case is entirely clear-cut down the line is lying to you. That's not how this works. They have a lot to prove in this case, and they haven't done a great job at doing so yet. So that's what we're dealing with at this point. It's just a straight-up distorted narrative that they're trying to push that's only going to hurt the cities even more in the long run because they're just being disingenuous. And second, if the jury doesn't convict him on all accounts and recommend drawing and quartering, every juror's life will be destroyed, plain and simple. The issue is that those who voted to acquit will be outed and life as they know it will be over. That's a consideration you have to have if you're sitting on a jury right now, is that if you don't go along with everything that the woke BLM mob believes in, your entire life will be, everything that you've done will be completely blasted out online. Where you live, everything will be lost. And to be honest with you, I don't think that most people would have the courage to sit on a jury without already having it made up in their mind that they're going to convict. Because the ones that are sitting on there, knowing that they're not going to convict or maybe just considering not convicting, are going to have some real issues in the future if they vote the wrong way on this. And the issue, too, that they're not talking about is that there's still no evidence of racism. That's why this case has become such a massive deal, is it not? The mere fact that we're even talking about this is because they think that it is racism. And, the crazy part is that the prosecution has done nothing to even try to prove that the guy was racist. Because they know better. They know better. It isn't provable in court, and it's irrelevant to the case entirely. But yet, that's why it's such a big deal. That's why the Minneapolis riots were happening yesterday. Just because they assumed it was racist. They don't care about beyond a reasonable doubt. They just want to steal stuff. And then there's also the autopsy report, which shows that Floyd had fentanyl, methamphetamine in his system, and had a serious heart problem, and that Chauvin's neck hold did not in fact cause damage to Floyd's trachea. But they're going to ignore that. You're not going to see these details reported on the news from the mainstream media whatsoever, because they simply don't care. They know what narrative they need to push, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to push that narrative. Plain and simple. I think all of this really speaks to the idea that we live in a current time where people are less informed than ever, but more upset than ever. I can't help but to conflate the two and just come under the impression that it's the misinformation, that the fact that people are just so ignorant these days is what fuels their anger. If they only had the facts, if they only had the statistics, then maybe, just maybe, they will come to a realization that what they think they believe is so true, what they're so mad about, they shouldn't be mad about at all. And that's where this all comes down to. Because the left-wing people that are pushing this stuff with the BLM narrative simply don't care about Black lives. You're seeing it over and over again. They don't care about the racism. I mean, they really don't even care about Derek Chauvin. This isn't even about him. This whole trial has nothing to do with him, in my opinion. It's really, and the way that the Democrats are framing this is a referendum on racism in the United States. That's how they see this. That's all they see it as. How does this look as a whole to our country? Not about a simple understanding of just the judicial process. You would think that in most of these situations that most people would think, oh, we live in the information day and age, do we not? Where anybody can find any information they want for free, easily, within 5 seconds. You can go online, look up something and know something. You can be an expert on it in no time. But now we live in a day and age where it's as easy as ever to get this information, to find these stats, to look at what actually is going on in the trial, but yet people just don't care. They just want to be mad, and they want to be ignorant. They don't want to look at the facts of the situation. So that's where we're at today, and I hope that at some point we can get people more informed overall, in general. Because the more informed Americans are, the less likely we are to slip into stupid decisions of having people looting and stealing things like just complete animals. That's what it is. That's what that behavior is. It can't be anything else other than that. It's unacceptable. All they're doing is fueling more racism, because people are looking at this stuff that's happening and they're saying, man, every time something bad happens to a black guy, regardless of whether he, whether it was justified or not, these people are going out there literally destroying my business, destroying cities, destroying everything. Maybe black people just get upset at stupid stuff and just like to destroy cities and steal things. That's right there. The racism you're trying to stop is what you're basically exacerbating by doing this. But they don't get that at all. They never have, and they probably never will. We can only hope that they do. But ultimately, it just comes down to the fact that people just have no idea what's going on in this country. They don't know any of the facts of the case, and they don't care about the facts. They just want to be upset, and they'll do whatever it takes to be upset and to continue to be upset. You just watched a clip from the William Hall Show. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.